talking about the post office scandal after the ITV drama Mr Bates versus the post office. Government ministers have been meeting today after Rishi Sunak said he was looking at ways to potentially clear hundreds of those who were wrongfully convicted. Tom Hedges ran the Hogsthorpe post office near Skegness until he was convicted of stealing £23,000. His conviction was later quashed.
Well, I mean, watching it was just emotional, because everything that's gone on in that drama, I am part of all the characters within the story, which is for a number of people, but I suppose the story was impossible to actually put everybody in it. It's been like 15, 16 years. It's not just the prisoners going to prison. It's the aftermath of losing your job, being shunned in your community, people thinking you're a thief, spending my time on tag, becoming ill, being unable to work. You know, it's just a train of events. I've had quite a number of messages from people, but that was back in 2021 when I had my conviction overturned. But then obviously there's still people who was probably at the mindset, there's no smoke without fire. But because now the story is out there and people actually now understand the magnitude of how big this actually is, I think it's going to be giving people a better understanding.
That's another example of someone wronged from this area. Janet Skinner, former sub-postmaster from Hull, who was sent to prison in 2006. She served 9 months and has since had her conviction quashed. David Davis is the Conservative for Halton, Price and Howden, and he's calling on the government to ensure those responsible for this are held to account. He can join us this evening. Good evening. What do you want to see happen tonight, please?
Well, I want 4 things to happen. I want, number one, an acceleration of the process of overturning the remaining convictions. There could be as many as 900 all told, and I think we're only cleared about 90. Secondly, I want to see an acceleration in the process of paying compensation and the clarification of that process. Now, those 2 things, the Post Office has been frankly obstructive. By employing expensive lawyers to challenge the compensation claims and by objecting to some of the appeals. So those 2 things got to happen. Then we've got to take away from the Post Office its rights to police its own affairs. It shouldn't have its own police force, frankly, because that means they may not be as impartial as we want them to be. And finally, the point you started with, we need to find out really who made the decision to tell the lies that led to these false convictions? Because there was a fundamental lie told over and again, which is that nobody but the postmasters had access to the computers. Well, that's not true. And once that is proven to be untrue, then the whole case falls apart. You know, if you alone control a computer and £20,000 disappears from it, then you're responsible. But if you and I control that same computer or access that computer, you can't tell, and therefore, you know, if it's an error caused by me rather than assessed by you, then plainly the conviction is wrong. So that's something we have to do quite quickly, I think.
Just on the process, I mean, we just heard from Janet Skinner, David, before we spoke to you. She's calling for an independent body to be involved in this. She wants the Post Office removed from this process altogether. Would you support that?
Yes, I do. I think, you know, the Post Office keeps saying publicly, you know, it wants to see the injustice corrected and so on, but at the same time, it employs the most expensive lawyers in London to challenge the compensation claims, you know. And as far as I can tell, the authorities, which I presume in this case is the Post Office, have been challenging and arguing with some of the appeals, where the appeal is clearly one which falls in this category. So there's a lot to be said. Well, frankly, I just don't want the Post Office to have any say over future policing of its activities, and we may as well start now with these current scandals, these current wrongful convictions.
A lot of the messages that we're getting this afternoon and got last week as well, David, and I'm paraphrasing here, but seem to say it's a bit of a rum job that it's taken an ITV drama to expedite all this. Would you agree with people who feel like that? Yeah,
but I do, but I can understand why. I mean, look, I've I've had to deal with a number of sort of miscarriage of justice cases. And one of the things that doesn't happen, you always are pushing against, is that nobody quite understands quite how cruel, how miserable the effect of these things are. I think Janet was referring to, you lose your liberty, you lose your reputation, you lose your money, you lose your house, you lose your job. Your whole life is crushed. Every aspect of your life that you value is crushed. And I think what we saw last week, what that docudrama showed in terms, was that effect. Now I've known about this. I've been involved in this for some years now, and yet even I was almost moved to tears by some of the docudrama, and I knew most of the stories, not all of them, but I knew most of the stories. So what this does is engages public anger, public fury, frankly, behind it, and that in turn reinforces the actions of people like James Arbuthnot, Kevin Jones, me, others, trying to get it put right. And as you see today, I mean, there's a statement in the House this evening in which the Minister will answer some of these questions from those of us who've been campaigning, and the other people who've just come on board, as it were, with the campaign.
Can you give us any idea of how quickly it could happen? And by that I mean the mass appeals, the conviction quashing. Are we talking weeks, months, years?
Well, my question to the Minister is going to be, can you do these things in months, not years? That's precisely what I'm after, because there's an old proverb, justice delayed is justice denied. Well, what better demonstration than this? Somebody's had their life wrecked, and now we're taking forever to put it back on an even keel. Well, that is a very good demonstration of that proverb. We need to get on with this. Every month that passes where we haven't corrected it is itself an injustice, and so that's where the pressure is. Now, I think one of the things that's happened in this process is that the Prime Minister's become engaged, I think, for the first time. I don't think any Prime Minister in the past has been involved in this. And that's important because you've got the Department of Trade involved. Obviously, you've got the Post Office involved. You've got the Department of Trade that's a sponsoring department. You've got the Treasury involved because there are billions of pounds, and I mean billions of pounds engaged in this. You've got the Justice Department involved. So all of these departments have to come together, and the fact that the Prime Minister's got it on his desk will help us get the right answers. We don't get in a situation where we sometimes do, not this particular campaign, but campaigns generally, where you get an answer out of the department, but it can't do anything because the Treasury won't give it the money. That problem ought to be resolved by the engagement of the Prime Minister.
And has that taken too long?
Well, every Prime Minister has more than enough he can possibly do, possibly handle in his plate. And this Prime Minister was not Prime Minister when it started. I mean, this way dates right back to the 2000s. I mean, to the previous Labour government as well as the Tory government. So for what it's done is it's pushed it up the priority list, which is a great thing. It's a good thing.
Just finally, David, I know you've got a lot on your plate over the next couple of hours, but I want to ask you about Paula Venables. A lot of people talking about her. I'm sure you're aware of this petition. It's got lots and lots of signatures wanting her stripped of her CBE. What's your opinion on that?
My view is you should go through the procedure. I mean, there is an honours forfeiture committee which considers exactly these things, right? And that's what they should be looking at now. I mean, if I were Paula Venables, I would have given it back already. I mean, frankly, if I was in that position, I would have handed it back because I would have felt, I didn't earn it really. But we've got to have a proper procedure. I mean, you don't want to follow one injustice with another one. And the other thing to bear in mind is there are a number of people who are guilty of misbehaviour, at its worst, criminal behaviour, at its least bad, criminal negligence. It's somewhere in that spectrum, including her predecessors would have to look at, including the people who made the decision about her, to lie or whatever. And, and I don't want to sort of do something which is just, and satisfyingly fix that one thing. It's not. This is a big exercise in, frankly, criminal justice. And everybody involved in this, inside the Post Office, all the executives and managers who made these decisions, we have to look at what they did. Paula Venables would be one of those, and the final conclusion on what happens to her will come out of the truth, out of the facts, and that's something we should have been doing from the beginning of this. We wouldn't have had this catastrophic scandal if we'd worked off the facts and worked off proper procedure and proper justice from the beginning.
David Davis, thank you for your time. Conservative MP for Halton, Price and Howden.